We're now joined by John Farmer Jr., director of the Eagleton Institute of Politics at the great Rutgers University, also former attorney general in the state. Let me disclose, John, that I am a proud alum of the Eagleton Institute. Barely got out, but proud to.
One of our more distinguished alums. So it's good to see you, Stephen. Good to be here.
Yeah, it's an important day. And again, we are taping on the 13th of January. This will be seen January, February, March, et cetera. Assume, in fact, that as we speak, President Trump, Joe Biden will be president when you see this, is impeached for a second time. What is the historical significance of that, John?
Well, it's unprecedented. No president has been impeached more than once, and it speaks to the sort of the tenor of his term and the way it's ended. That he's ended up being impeached twice. My suspicion is that I guess a lot can change by the time it goes to trial in the Senate. But my suspicion is he'll also be the first president not convicted twice, and so I don't know what to make of that. But it is unprecedented for this to happen twice.
Let me ask you this, John. You wrote a piece. By the way, check out John Farmer's piece on NJ.com. Quote, "This failed revolution has been brewing for years." You talked about the horrific events, the insurrection, the riot on January 6th of 2021. You said it wasn't surprising. You said the hypocrisy there was about people who saying their blue lives matter and we're there for, we believe in law and order. And it was the opposite of all that and a lot worse. And God forbid, we don't know what could happen from that date until when this is seen and after. Talk about the significance of January 6th, John.
Well, I think January 6th obviously was shocking to everybody who witnessed it and very dismaying for those of us who really believe in this country and support it. But looking at it realistically, it's the culmination of events and trends that have been brewing for decades and not simply an aberration. If you go back a generation, when President Clinton was elected president, there were those who never accepted his legitimacy. And I think I sort of traced the beginnings of what we saw on January 6th to that. There were those who were dogging him throughout his presidency, ended up impeaching him and failing to convict him. But then we had Bush versus Gore, and the Supreme Court decided that election. There were many Democrats who never recognized legitimacy of President Bush, and it proceeded through Obama and now through Trump. And the polarization has gotten worse and worse. Social media, the advent of that in 2005 has just accelerated the polarization. So it culminates in this really horrible situation where we have American citizens storming their own Capitol.
Yeah, but John, isn't there something different about this? Yes, division, polarization, different media. You believe what you believe, so you go to a media source that tells you that you're right. And so we're bifurcated and chopped up in the media as well, except those of us in public broadcasting, as I often say, we have no horse in the race other than trying to play a meaningful role in the effective functioning of a representative democracy. That being said, John, isn't this different? The Trump presidency will have what effect on, quote, the functioning of democracy? This series is called Democracy at a Crossroads. What do you believe the longer term effect will be of the Trump presidency connected to that event on the 6th and beyond?
Well, I'm hoping that the long-term effect has been to shock Americans into realizing that we can't allow this polarization to continue and continue to be exacerbated by the structure of our politics where everything's about money. And so the social media companies, basically curate everybody's beliefs until the little cul-de-sacs of their own prejudices. So you end up not even recognizing the humanity of the people that you're talking to anymore. I'm hoping that those events were sufficiently shocking that it will make everybody take a pause and say, wait a minute, we've got to do something about this. We've got to change this. That's going to take time, though, because we've seen in the last week, some of the rhetoric is continuing to be, aggravating in nature, and there are rumors of events happening around the country on January 17th in many state capitals, and even on Inauguration Day. So I'm hoping that the long-term effect is to make everybody take a step back and say we have to change the structure of our politics. But in the short term, I think we're going to continue to deal with this potentially violent polarization that we're experiencing now.
As you listen to John Farmer, he's talking about January 17th, and then the inauguration, if you will, of President Biden, who will be president when this is seen. You see, you know what's so scary about this, John? We're taping on the date we're taping on the 13th, and we don't know what violence, and I'm hoping and praying that I'm wrong, but I don't know if I'm going to be wrong, because the security experts, the folks at the FBI and other places have picked up all sorts of information about planned violence. What do you believe the response should be on the part, just not of law enforcement or government overall, to such violent insurrection efforts, and to the point where members of Congress are saying they're afraid for themselves and their families and their safety, and God forbid, that's just a fear that is unfounded, but we don't know. Go ahead, John.
Look, I think they should be afraid for their safety. I mean, if you look at what happened on January 6th, the woman who was shot, the one person who was shot during the rioting and the insurrection that occurred, that was shot while a group that she was with was trying to actually smash the door open and get to Nancy Pelosi, and where she had been hidden out. Look, every member of Congress and the vice president's life was in danger last Wednesday. So they're justified in feeling that their lives are in danger. I mean, my own take on what's happened since is, I understand the impeachment. I think it was impeachable what the president did. I would have started, though, with a bipartisan censure of the president, to get both parties, to get Congress as a whole saying this was an affront to our branch of government. And what the demonstration that you basically stirred up was an affront to our form of government, to our branch of government, and threatened the life of your vice president. The crowd was chanting, "Hang Mike Pence," and I don't think they were kidding. The response of law enforcement, I think, needs to be severe. I think the people who stormed the Capitol committed federal crimes. It needs to be investigated thoroughly. They need to be prosecuted. It needs to be made clear to people that our institutions must be respected, regardless of the rhetoric coming even from the President of the United States.
So, free speech. Again, as we speak, as we do this program, Twitter taking lots of people off. Let's start with, as when the show is seen, former President Trump. People who say, wait a minute, what's up with these social media companies? Twitter takes Trump off, they're going to take somebody else off. No, if my point of view is something they disagree with, help people understand the difference between having different points of view. And by the way, I want to make it clear, for people who go on my Facebook page and our great social media team who manages it, I tell you up front, you personally demonize someone, you threaten violence, you make excuses for violence and insurrection, you make an attack on me, my family, or you're not welcome. That's not a political point of view. I'll get off my soapbox here, John. Help people understand the difference between free speech around a political point of view versus something very different. John Farmer?
Well, free speech is not absolute, and the Supreme Court has held that on numerous occasions. And the classic example is yelling fire in a movie house, causing a stampede and having people die. And so the decisions of the social media companies to take the president off, at least temporarily, is a result of their view that that's what he did last week. He created a clear and present danger of a collapse of our government. And
what about others, John? What about others who say it was a good thing that happened, and they advocated in New Jersey or in New York or Connecticut? Is the role of social media companies and those of us in the media not to have those voices heard?
Well, listen, if you view it in the abstract, the idea that a few moguls essentially can censor the president of the United States is pretty outrageous, right? I think there's a short-term solution to a much bigger, long-term structural problem. So in the abstract, it is outrageous that social media companies have that much power that they can essentially censor an entire point of view. On the other hand, violence is never appropriate. They viewed him as advocating violence. It certainly resulted in violence last week, so I understand their decisions. But I think one of the things that has to come out of this is a long look at how these social media companies are structured, how their algorithms that are designed really for commercial purposes have had the effect of basically driving people apart to the point where they can't even talk to each other anymore. And that needs to be reformed. Even the social media companies themselves have on occasion said there still needs to be some sort of regulation. My own view is that the public, there's a public trust involved in these platforms that is akin to radio and television when they first came into existence, and there was a recognition that any kind of monopoly on information was dangerous. And the result of that was the Federal Communications Act. I think that act needs to be looked at and sort of amended to deal with the presence of these enormous social media platforms that have outsized power to control the shape of opinion.
30 seconds. By the way, when I remember being at Eagleton, the late, great Dr. Alan Rosenthal, my mentor there, I remember we'd bring people together to have spirited conversations, Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians, others. Real quick, 30 seconds. Our role in public broadcasting to have different views heard. How important are we? And I'm trying not to be self-serving, but how important are we?
Look, I just think it's a basic truth that public broadcasting right now is about the only neutral fact finder you can go to get the news straight. So, I mean, that's what I watch. That's what I encourage people to watch. And I think the PBS plays an enormously important role in sort of making sure that the public square is one of integrity. And I frankly view Eagleton as playing the same role.
Yeah. And by the way, for those who think I just tried to turn that into a commercial, I assure you that was not the intent. It's because, as I often say, we don't have a horse in the race. We just want to play a meaningful role in the effective functioning of a representative democracy. John Farmer, Jr., director of the great Eagleton Institute of Politics at Rutgers University and former AG, Attorney General in the state. Thank you, John. All the best to you and everyone at Eagleton. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Steve. Great to see you, and thanks for having me.
You got it. I'm Steve Adubato. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.
One-on-One with Steve Adubato has been a production of the Caucus Educational Corporation. Funding has been provided by NJM Insurance Group, PSC&G, New Jersey Sharing Network, the Healthcare Foundation of New Jersey, Holy Name Medical Center, Fedway Associates, Inc., Valley Bank, Delta Dental of New Jersey, and by United Airlines. Promotional support provided by New Jersey Globe and by Insider NJ.
I could feel my lungs fill with oxygen, and I got my life back.
The Sharing Network means to me hope, life, and everything.
The Sharing Network was a lifeline to me when I really needed it.
We are an organ procurement organization.
The core purpose of the New Jersey Sharing Network is to save and enhance lives.
To honor those who gave.
Pay tribute to those who received.
Offer hope to those who continue to wait.
And remember the lives lost while waiting.
For the gift of life.